Namaste everyone. I welcome you all to today's Yes Talk titled Ensuring the Safety of Women Through Student-Centered Gender Sensitization Programs. The guest speaker today with us is Dr. Namita Rajput. I would like to share a quick introduction for her. Dr. Namita Rajput is a professor of commerce at Sri Aurobindo College with a rich teaching experience of almost 3 decades. Her contribution in the area of banking and finance, human resource management, sustainable development goals, and gender is well known with many research publications, books, and copyrights to her credit. She is actively involved in the arena of social work for the upliftment of underprivileged people, children, women, and other socially marginalized sections of society for the last 15 years through her NGO UNHAD, which is registered under NITI Ayog, Government of India. She is empanelled in the Ministry of Women and Child Development as a POSH trainer. She was recently felicitated with Bharat Ratna Dr. Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan International Award of Honor 2022 for her efforts in narrowing gender gap. We welcome you, Namita ma'am. Thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to hearing you on this very important subject. Over to you, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you so much, and my greetings to Sri Ramesh Bijlani ji and the organizers of this particular program of Yes Talks. So the topic is very, very pertinent, and it's very, very important in the present context, as we can see the uprise of the cases against the children, irrespective of the gender, the male and the female. The crime rate is actually cloaking, and in terms of the schools and the colleges, also we often listen many cases now and then. So in order to clutch the problem, in order to reduce the problem, in order to uproot the problem, these kind of awareness programs are very, very important. So I will definitely put in my best effort to share the particular insights relating to this, and especially in terms of the children, irrespective of the gender, because this particular sensitization program, when you talk about the POXO law, is a gender neutral law. So I will share the screen here and start with my presentation here. So as a matter of fact, it is our prime responsibility to be a POXO torchbearer in terms of spreading the law provisions in order to sensitize the people. So let me start with the definition of what child is. The definition of child development basically is changing concept of their age, in changing concept of their years, as and when they develop, the kind of the knowledge what they gain in terms of development what they have, it differs from their adolescence to their infancy to their prenatal and to their early childhood. As and when the child is matured, he comes to understand and he comes to know about what exactly the harassment is all about, what the abuse is all about. But we have to understand from the period of their development. So prenatal stages from the conception to the birth, infancy and the toddlerhood is from the birth to 2.5 years, followed by the early childhood, which is from 2.5 to 6 years, is definitely very, very tender age. And the middle childhood from 6 to 12 years, and the adolescence is from 12 to 18 years. So as far as the child is concerned, we are having different laws in our country, and the age differs as per the acts which have been passed in Government of India. Like in the case of the Factories Act, the child age is 15 years. And in terms of the child labor, that is Prohibition and Regulation, the age is 14 years. And the right of the children to free and compulsory education is from 6 to 14 years. And in terms of the maintenance and the welfare of the parents and the Senior Citizen Act, And the child or the children includes the son, daughter, grandson, granddaughter, but does not include a minor. Now, basically, the adolescent is basically who has completed the 15 years of age. So when you talk about this particular POXO Act, which is all about the sexual abuse, the age is less than 18 years, what we consider as a child. Now, moving forward, why are we talking about the child safety and security? We actually want to create a big awareness about what the child security and safety is all about. Because when you talk about a child, the children and the child, when you talk about, they're very, very vulnerable. And we want them to grow as a good human being. They are our future. And definitely, these are the people who are going to run the society, who are going to reach the society. So basically, all what we need here is that they are, we have to build a strong future. We have to, build the nation. And the most important pillar when you talk about is the children. And that is why we are talking about that their safety and their security is very, very important. The concept of the child rights and the child safety and security started with the United Nations Convention, which took place in 1989, where we talked about that each child has to be discrimination free, irrespective of the race, the origin, the color, the gender, the language, religion, opinion, wealth, birth status, disability, etc. And when you talk about India, India signed the Convention of the Child Rights in the year 1992. Now, basically, it started with the core principles of non-discrimination, devotion of the best interest of the child, about the survival, life, and the development, and also the respect for the views of a child. Now, all these things and creating a backdrop is very, very important in the light of what we are discussing, because, it starts from this. So the Constitution of India, we talk about Article 21A, which talks about right to free and compulsory elementary education, followed by Article 24, which talks about a right to be protected from any hazardous employment till the age of 14 years. And Article 39 talks about the right to be protected from being abused and forced by economic necessity to enter the occupations which is not at all suiting their age. Article 39 talks about the equal opportunities and the facilities to develop a healthy manner and the conditions of freedom and dignity and guaranteed protection of the childhood and the youth. And of course, when you talk about the early childhood care and education to all until they complete the age of 6. So, there are some special laws which makes a special mention here, like Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act 2012, Juvenile Justice, Care and Protection of Children Act 2015, and the Commission for Child Right Act 2005. Now, when you talk about the protection from the student-centric point of view, there are, the stakeholders remains the same. The first and the foremost stakeholder what we talk about is the parent and the family, the school, society, hospital, doctors, police, media, and the government. Now, these stakeholders primarily, they have to work around the different aspects of the child development, whether you talk about the crime rate reduction, when you talk about their development, you talk about holistic development of the child, etc. But when you see the mirror of the Indian society, when you make any act, the implementation of that particular act is a basic problem. Like, for example, when you talk about the sexual abuse of the child, whether it is a male child or a female child, the parents, they are under the severe, terrific social humiliation, owing to which they do not complain. So that's a major problem, because the child is sexually assaulted. So they are under a big trauma, and they don't want to share this kind of incidents to the public at large. So it either leads to the delays or leaves out the number of victims unnoticed, uncomplained, then there is a lack of awareness that the parents, they are unaware about the laws which are available, their rights which are available, that if the child is a victim and he's under the influence of any kind of a sexual abuse, so how they can move forward with such complaint and result into the conviction of the people. So they are unaware of the rights. And of course, this is quite prevalent when you talk about the POXO Act implementation, because I saw the statistics which are very, very disturbing. Like the rate of conviction is very less and the rate of acquittals is very high. Owing to which, when you talk about, say, 43.44% of the trials of the POXO end in the acquittals, while only 14.03 end in the conviction. So this is a very sad state of affairs. And similarly, many states have not yet compiled the provisions of the Act, as they have not established the special children court. And the Act doesn't cover all aspects of the crime against children. And also, when you talk about the particular POXO Act, it is not a comprehensive act as of now, because when you are entering into a digital era, especially after the COVID-19, the cyberbullying and the other online crimes against the children, they are not covered. And, this is being amended. The act is still evolving. And of course, if we all join hands together in terms of this awareness programs and spreading about what the rights of the parents are, what the rights of the child is, then of course we can go a long way in arresting the ill effects of the sexual abuse, and we can make our country a better country, which is a crime-free country. And of course, when you talk about the public prosecutor, the ineffective training is instrumental in in a high rate of acquittal rate of the perpetrator. So we have to actually take the steps in a very comprehensive way and in a collective way in order to reduce the crime against the children. Now, definitely, when you talk about the POXO Act, I told you that there are a lot of stakeholders which are involved in the reduction of the crime rate against the children, against the youth, and against the male and the female child. The first and the foremost stakeholder what we talk about is a parent and a family. So they have to give a very, very safe and a protected environment. There are few cases in which the prime responsibility was of the parents, and the parents were involved in the rape case of a child, of their own daughter. So, considering these kind of prime cases, I will not like to mention the name of the cases here, but the crux of the issue is that the person who is responsible for protecting the child is only abusing the child sexually. So what to talk about the implementation further? So their own parents were involved in selling of the children. Their own parents were involved in raping their own daughter. So all these things are very, 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 what do I say? That this is not to be taken, because the person who's given the main responsibility of protecting the child are only abusing the child. So as a prime stakeholder for protecting the children, the parents and the family have a very responsible role to play. In fact, they have to give a safe and a protected environment to the child. No discrimination among the children on the ground of the sex, color, intelligence, etc. That you're giving more importance to a male child and the less important to a female child. So all these things, if you are implementing at the ground level, at the parental issues or at the family issues, all these things will actually spread the gender stereotype, which will be deep rooted and will increase the crime rate further. So what we have to give is that we have to give equal education, whether we have a male child or a female child, a very constructive and an encouraging environment for both. We have to take care of their food and hygiene, and of course the health of the child, which is like the emotional as well as the physical. Now coming on to the prime responsibility of the schools, because most of the time when the child is under 18, he or she is there in the environment of a school. So the prime responsibility of the school is to conduct these kind of awareness program, the kind of a moral education, the kind of programs which is resulting into the spreading of a good touch and a bad touch, the safety and the security issues in a very simple and lucid manner, depending upon their stages of development. Like they should conduct a different kind of a program for primary, for the middle, and for the higher education when you talk about up to 12th. And because when the students enter the college, so probably they are even less than 18, so there the training of POSH and POXO both are important. So the health and the hygiene programs, the psychosocial aspects, they are very, very important to be sensitized about. The safety and security, giving them the good infrastructure, health and hygiene issues, and the psychosocial aspects are also very, very important. Like I'll explain what the corporal punishment is all about. There should be, the school has a very prime responsibility of reducing the corporal punishment. They have to see and lift the veil in terms of whether the corporal punishment is, let me explain you what it is all about and what special role the school has to play here. The corporal punishment is the most widespread form of violence against children. It is a punishment in which the physical force is used and intended to cause some degree of pain or discomfort to the child. Like, you are physically hitting the child. So you have to see, because some children are not vocal at all. They are suffering and suffering because they have a fear that if they speak out anything, they are going to be, under the more influence of the corporal punishment. So you have to understand their behavior part also. If they're not vocal, you have to see their behavior, that what kind of changes are taking place. So, there was a rough patch in most of the students, and out of two, one is a sexually abused child, out of which, say, many of 90% of the cases are not reported because of this corporal punishment, because of the bullying, intimidation, like, hitting the child, persuading them, you have to do this, otherwise we will, you frighten the child, you threaten the child. So as a matter of fact, it is the responsibility of the school to see that these kind of abuses are stopped. You have to see whether the child is isolated in terms of he's inhibited in talking about it. So that is definitely, there are different kind of a psychologist who are employed by the school. So on a very regular basis, these kind of the issues relating to counseling of the children, and on a very regular basis, like all we do is a timetable in the school what we follow, and the timetable what we follow in the colleges. So on the similar pretext, we should also have the kind of a psychological sessions, which will strengthen the child and give them the strength to speak out that, yes, I am being abused, I'm being emotionally abused, or I'm being physically abused, or I'm being sexually abused. So the prime role and the responsibility of the parents and the children is there, and you have to constantly monitor any kind of a change in the behavior of the child. So ultimately you can come out to a particular a kind of a reporting that, yes, I can see a strong change in the behavior of this particular child. So let us talk about what is being happening in his personal life, what is being happening, whether he's a victim or not. So with a constant interaction and the counseling session, you'll be able to pinpoint the child abuse. And similarly, we have a very special role to be played by the society. Like, we have to build a strong character, we have to give them a healthy environment, we have to show a better human aspect, always not showing the darker side but the brighter side also. So less criticism, giving moral support, giving the narration of the moral stories will definitely give a long way in terms of how the sexual abuse at the school levels can be stopped. So basically, it's a student-centric approach, monitoring the child, understanding his behavior, understanding the empathetic behavior. So when you talk about the hospitals and the doctors, they can deal with this kind of a problem in a very, very specific way. Like the patience is the key in dealing with the child and the parents. Provide a proper medical and the psychological care, cooperate with the agencies like a police support, child care home, etc. Then, of course, how can we forget the important role which the media can play in terms of reducing, arresting, uprooting, and clutching the ill effects of the sexual abuse of the children, like about sensitive reporting. Like when you are reporting, you have to be very sensitive about how and what words to be, used, because there are many children who would be reading this report. Their parents would be, seeing this kind of a report. So you definitely don't have to name the child, because it has, the confidentiality has to be maintained. You have to keep the moral values intact while reporting and provide a kind of a moral support and no criticism at all. When you talk about a child abuse, WHO defines the child abuse at what? All forms of physical, emotional, ill treatment, sexual abuse, neglecting or neglect the treatment, commercial and other exploitation, resulting in an actual or a potential harm to the child's health, survival, development, or dignity in the context of a relationship of responsibility, of trust, and the power. Now, let me just give you a bird's eye view of what child abuse is all about. When a child is physically abused, he is being neglected or ill treated, the sexual abuse, and the emotional abuse. So, how the sexual assault can happen? By touch, by verbal, by visual, and through electronic media. So different types of the child sexual assault is hands-on and hands-off. This is one. When the harasser touches the child, it's a hands-on. When the child, is abused without touching, it is a hands-off. Then there is a direct and an indirect sexual abuse. Direct abuse is when the person does it directly with the child, and indirectly is about child is being used for any sexual activity. Then about the physical and the mental. The physical abuse is again the touch by the harasser, and the mental and the emotional is sexualization or violation of the child, making a pornography or making a child to watch a pornography is a mental abuse which the child undergoes. So whether the abuse is done by a known person, where 90% of the cases are like this, and the 10% is by a stranger, which the child does not know. Definitely, abuse happens more in case of a known person, and 90% of the reported, the crimes are when the child knows the perpetrator. And of course, the abuse can happen inside or outside the community, like within the school premises, or probably by kidnapping, abduction, trafficking, or prostitution. So, what are the basic causes when you talk about a sexual abuse in India? First, and the foremost thing what we talk about, that child is the property of parents. The parents, they feel that there is a taboo discussing about it, like sex and sexuality. Now, when you talk about the tolerance also, the tolerance to gender-based violence, specifically in India, is at an extreme level. A culture that believes and the value adults over the children, and they disrespect the opinion of the child. So that's also one cause. The children are considered as immature, and of course, you have the strong conviction that they will not understand it. What is the impact when the child undergoes this kind of a trauma or this kind of an abuse? It results into, because if the crime is a heinous crime like the penetration, rape, etc., the child may die. There are several injuries on his body. There are negative coping behavioral issues which will be as a result when the crime happens. The child goes in isolation. The child does not want to talk to anyone. And there are unintended pregnancies because of the penetrating assault because of the penetration, rape, etc. Then, of course, the non-communicable diseases, a sexual assault happens without using protection. So the victim might end up contracting into a very sexually transmitted diseases, which is really fatal for his own death as a child. Then, of course, there is a impaired brain and nervous system development. So suffering such mental trauma at such a tender age, at a young age, may end up retarded mental growth of a child, because it's a kind of a shock which he's going under. And the major part, what I want to highlight here, that if a child is undergoing a sexual assault at a very tender age, he does not know that he is being harassed. So look at the circumstances here. It affects his mental growth. It affects his physical growth. It affects his physical body, his mental thoughts, that what is going around. He's confused. She's confused. You know, when you talk about the child abuse, which is a gender, this particular act is a gender neutral. So we include the child in which the both male and the female child are included. So the abusive, violent behavior towards others and the young children. The victim of the sexual abuse tend to behave in the same manner with the younger children as a revenge, or to experiment the same, because they are at tender age. They don't understand what they are going through and what they should behave. So there's a runaway, dropout, juvenile delinquencies, which is like at a cloaking rate rising. So most dropouts and the runaways or the young criminals are who have faced the sexual assault somewhere in their childhood or the other. So, you know, there are no wonders, 7 wonders of the world in the eyes of a child. There are 7 million. So just about some important facts here, just to reiterate the problem, just to highlight the problem once again. The children constitute 39% of the Indian population, and the children have more legal rights than adults. And there are special laws for the safety, security of the children, and most of them are very, very stringent. And still, the fact is that in spite of having more rights, in spite of having more laws, the children are suffering, and the number of crime rate is also cloaking. And 90% of the cases, the offenders were known to the victim. So it's a very, very sad state of affairs. So that is why this particular act of POXO is in place, the awareness of which is very, very important at the school level. And when you talk about a POSH, that is prevention of sexual harassment at workplace for the females, is prevalent, and the awareness programs is like quite high, and which is going to result into prevention of the crime, which is better than cure. So why POXO? That is protection of child from sexual offenses, because prevention is better than redressal. The law is very, very stringent here, and the awareness can deter the offenses, because when the perpetrator knows that what is going to happen after the crime happens and he's arrested, what is the state, and this POXO has been amended and the death penalty has been included. So if we highlight these kind of incidences, these kind of workshops, these kind of spreading of the law, then of course the perpetrators will be afraid of getting into the crime. So the lack of awareness of the law is the biggest reason for committing the offenses. Like if I know that if I commit this offense and this is going to happen to me, so definitely there's something which will deter the offense. So that is why the prevention, the awareness results in the prevention, and prevention will secure the child of our country. The child sexual abuses was not a very serious concern, earlier, but now the schools are bound to spread the awareness, the government of India through the CBSE circulars, etc. But let me give you this fact that although this is a mandatory thing, but still it is not very, very effective. So that is why these kind of initiatives taken at various levels will definitely help us in reducing the crime rate against the children. Now, how to prevent the POXO crime, how to handle the POXO cases, and the consequences of the POXO crime. So let me just give you the overview of this in a very simple, way. The POXO awareness training is mandatory to schools, to the students, to the teaching staff, to the non-teaching staff, hospitals, orphanages, and whenever the children are a part of the business. So this subject matter expertise is a part of your profile. The parents, you have to inform your existing clients if it is an educational institution. And of course, the combination of POSH and POXO knowledge is very, very important in this regard. So that there are certain things which we have to unlearn, and there are certain things which we have to learn about the protection of children from POXO. So the Convention of the Rights of the Child in 1992, a special mention has to be there. Like, state parties undertake to protect the child from all forms of sexual exploitation and the sexual abuse. The countries shall take all appropriate national, bilateral, and multilateral measures to prevent the inducement or coercion of a child to engage in any unlawful sexual activity, the exploitative use of children in the prostitution or other unlawful sexual practices, and the exploitative use of children in pornography performances and material. So, we all took this convention, and India signed this in 1992. So there are some salient features of this POXO law. It applies to whole of India. It's a very, very special and a welfare law wherein special protection is given to the child. It's a criminal law, and it applies only to the sexual offenses, the cases of which are rising at a very explosive rate. And there is a very special feature of the POXO law here, that law of limitation is not applicable to this. What does it mean? The law of limitation prescribes the time limit for different suits within which an aggrieved person can approach the court for redressal or justice any time after attaining the adulthood also. Like, the incident happened when the child was 15, 16, 12, 13. While attaining the age of adulthood, if he wants to report that the child was sexually abused, he can do that. So that means the law of limitation is not applicable to the POXO law. It's a gender neutral law. It applies to both male as well as a female child, and the child can be accused. The non-reporting of an offense is an offense. Like, if you come to know that a child is abused in your neighborhood and you don't report that, still you can be punished for this particular pretext, that why have you not reported this, that a child is being abused. For the 6 months also you can be imprisoned. And under the POXO, the death penalty can be imposed if the crime is very, very heinous. And there is a very special fact which I want to make a mention here, that there is a presumption of being guilty. This means that there is a presumption of a guilt. The state assumes you have done something wrong, and it is for you to demonstrate your innocence later. So when it comes to the knowledge, then of course you are guilty. And later on, by collecting the evidences, by collecting the other kind of the sources which prove that you're not guilty are required. And of course, the personal law, when you talk about, the personal law is a law by which an individual is governed in respect of the various matters relating to marriage, divorce, maintenance, adoption, inheritance, guardianship, successionship, etc. It does not interfere with the POXO law, because POXO is a very, very special law. And the Ministry of Women and Child Development takes care that a victim of a child sexual abuse can file a complaint at any time, irrespective of his or her present age. This is a very, very special feature which makes the children more empowered. So the Ministry of Women and Child Development had recently consulted the Ministry of Law in view of overriding provisions of the POXO Act over other criminal laws and the provisions of mandatory reporting of such offences. The Ministry of Law, after examining the provisions of the POXO vis-a-vis other provisions of CRPC, has advised that there appears no period of limitation mentioned in Section 19 in regard to reporting of the offences under the POXO Act 2012. The POXO Act does not provide any period of limitation for reporting such sexual offences. On the receipt of the opinion of the Ministry of Law, Srimati Menaka Sanjay Gandhi, Minister of Women and Child Development, stated that now any victim at any age can complain the sexual abuse faced by him or her as a child. So she urged the victims to report the cases under POXO e-box. So often, the children are unable to report such crimes as a perpetrator in most of the either a family member, a relative, or a very closely known person. So studies have also shown that the child continues to carry a trauma of the sexual abuse till very late in his life. And in order to overcome this trauma, many grown-up people have started coming out to report the abuse faced by them as a child. So the Protection of Children from the Sexual Offences came in force in 14/11/2012. It's a gender-neutral act which has been enacted to strengthen the legal provisions for the protection of children from sexual abuse. And the Protection of Children Act of 2012 defines the child at any age below the age of 18. I would like to mention here, हर रोज बच्चे यौन शोषण का शिकार हो रहे हैं. सुरक्षा हमारी किसकी जिम्मेदारी है? सुरक्षा फैमिली की, मीडिया की, गवर्नमेंट की, सोसाइटी की, सभी की जिम्मेदारी है. Children are not safe at home also. Their close relatives are doing sexual abuse to them. इन बातों को रख अभिभावक ध्यान रखें. अपने बच्चों को लैंगिक शोषण के बारे में जानकारी दें. उनको बताएं कि लैंगिक शोषण क्या होता है. लैंगिक शोषण की जानकारी के अभाव में बच्चा समस्या को समझ ही नहीं पाता. ये सबसे बड़ी परेशानी है. बातचीत करिए, उनके साथ सेक्स और सेक्सुअलिटी के बारे में डिस्कस करिए, गुड टच बैड टच के बारे में डिस्कस करिए. नहीं तो बच्चे के अब्यूज के लिए आप खुद जिम्मेदार होंगे. इन बातों को रखकर अभिभावक ध्यान रखें कि बच्चों की बातों को गंभीरता से देखें. उनके बिहेवियर में जो चेंजेस हैं उसको ध्यान में देखिए. बच्चों की बातों को महत्वता दीजिए. बच्चे के बिहेवियर में अगर कुछ चेंज आ रहा है उसको महत्वता दीजिए. किसी भी व्यक्ति के बारे में सच बताने पर बच्चे को हतोत्साहित मत करिए कि नहीं तुम गलत बोल रहे हो, तुमने समझने में गलती करी होगी. नहीं, अंकल मेरे साथ ऐसा करते हैं, अंकल ने मेरे साथ ऐसा किया, नहीं इसको नहीं समझ में आता, अंकल तो बहुत अच्छे हैं. इस तरह की बातें कर कर आप बच्चे के उत्साह को कम कर रहे हैं. बच्चों की जो बातें हैं उनको आपको ध्यानपूर्वक सुनना है. उनके बिहेवियर में, उनके थॉट प्रोसेस में, उनके एक्शन में अगर कुछ आपने चेंज महसूस किया है, कुछ बदलाव आपने देखा है, उसको केंद्रित करिए. उसको समझिए कि बच्चा क्या कहना चाह रहा है. बच्चा क्या किस तरीके से एक शोषण हो रहा है बच्चे के साथ. अगर बच्चा बात ना करे तो भी आप उसके लक्षण को समझिए. कई बच्चे बात कर पाते हैं, कई बच्चे नहीं बात कर पाते, क्योंकि जैसे मैंने आपको बताया कि बच्चे के ऊपर प्रेशर होता है कि आपने अगर ये बात किसी से भी कही तो हम आपको छोड़ेंगे नहीं. बच्चे को मारते हैं, अलग से मारते हैं. तो आप बच्चे को स्ट्रेंथन करिए कि बच्चा किस एक मेंटल ट्रॉमा से गुजर रहा है. और ये चीज को पहचानना मुश्किल नहीं होता. इस चीज को समझिए, इस शोषण को समझिए और बच्चे को इस चीज के लिए इंपॉर्टेंस दीजिए कि उससे अलग से बात करिए। एज अ पेरेंट, एज अ फादर, एज अ मदर, जिस तरीके से भी आप बच्चे को नोट करेंगे, बच्चे के बिहेवियर में नोट करेंगे, बच्चे के थॉट प्रोसेस में नोट करेंगे, उसको उससे उससे आपको एक इंफॉर्मेशन मिल रही है, उस इंफॉर्मेशन को यूज करिए, उसकी तय तक जाने की कोशिश करिए। एंड इट इज नॉट द अब जैसे आपको ये लगता है कि बच्चा, लड़की 17 साल की है और उसने कंसेंट दिया है, सेक्सुअल कंसेंट दिया है, बट एक मैं आपको बात बता दूं, 18 साल से पहले हम कंसेंट की बात मानते ही नहीं है। It is not the consent because you said yes last time, because you are not an adult. It's not consent if you are under 16. अगर बच्चे की एज 16 साल की है और परपेट्रेटर इस चीज को बोलता है कि इसने बोला था कि हम सेक्सुअल एक्ट में पड़े और हमने सेक्सुअल एक्ट किया, इट इज नॉट द कंसेंट इफ यू आर आउट ऑफ इट, इट इज नॉट द कंसेंट इफ यू आर टू स्कैर्ड टू से नो। आपके ऊपर, आपके बच्चे पे प्रेशर भी तो आ सकता है कि नहीं, आपको सेक्सुअल एक्टिविटीज में इन्वॉल्व होना है। उसके बाद बच्चे का वीडियो बना के उसके साथ ब्लैकमेलिंग होती है, उसके साथ यौन उत्पीड़न होता है, उसकी पोर्नोग्राफी बनाई जाती है। ये सारी की सारी चीजें आपको समझनी है, और इसके अंदर बच्चा कहीं पे भी अपने आप को रिस्पॉन्सिबल ना ठहराए। इस तरह की हेल्पलाइन नंबर्स हैं 1098, जिसमें आप कांटेक्ट कर सकते हैं। बच्चे को पूरी हेल्प मिलती है। वुमेन एंड चाइल्ड डेवलपमेंट का ई बॉक्स है जहां पे आप कंप्लेंट कर सकते हैं। बच्चे का मेडिकल एग्जामिनेशन होता है, बच्चे के साथ एक काउंसलर अपॉइंट किया जाता है ताकि वो मेंटली वीक ना हो। So the term sexual assault refers to the sexual contact or the behavior that occurs without explicit consent of the victim, like attempted rape, unwanted sexual touch, forcing a victim to perform a sexual act, like like an oral sex or penetrating the perpetrator's body, and etc., which is counted as sex. So say no, and sex is forced on you anyways. You are threatened if you don't have the sex. A gun, a knife, a weapon is used to scare before doing into or putting yourself into a sexual activity. You are touched sexually in the places that you don't want to be touched. You are threatened that lies and the rumors will spread about you if you do not have sex with me. You get drunk or stoned, passed out, or wake up to find you had been sexed. So you are forced to have sex with the people other than your own partner. So a blood relative forces you to have the sex. Like for example, you are given a substance before, by some kind of a clever act, and then the sex is forced on you. So all these activities are called as the sexual harassment. So there are verbal sexual harassment, like referring to an adult as a girl, hunk, doll, babe, honey, whistling at someone, making sexual comments about a person's body, making the sexual comments, turning work discussions to a sexual topic, telling the sexual jokes or the story, touching the private parts, and of course, you can say no to it. Try and talk to your parents if you're a child. Try to narrate the incidences and the circumstances, what you're going through as a child. And of course, if the child is not coming up, it is the prime responsibility of the different stakeholders to take care of the child. Sometimes, the sexual rumors are, spread across by texting, online sexual messages, like this Kelly is easy, about people on the bathroom stalls or in the other public places. These kind of writings are done. So it is definitely showing you some kind of inappropriate acts. So all these things have to be stopped. Like, send me a pic, don't be shy, send me a naked picture of yours. These kind of messages are very, very common, and this is a cyberbullying. And pulling at someone's clothing and brushing up against someone, letting him or her, if you are being harassed, please let the perpetrator know that you have to stop it. You have to immediately stop it. Do not get afraid, because there are so many helplines which are there, so many people at your back and call who can really help you if you are being harassed. This is specifically for the students. And if you're being harassed, don't blame yourself. And the what thing you have to do is that you don't have to ignore it. You have to get these things in the notice of your parents, to your loved ones, to your trusted ones, and make them know about it. The sooner you tell, the better it is. Otherwise, the things are going to be continued, and the sexual assault is going to be continued. So, if the perpetrator is stopping you to say all these things, or your naked videos are made, then of course there is a Kishore Police Ikai which is there for your help, and the helpline number is 1098, and of course the Zilla Bal Sanrakshan Ikai will come to your rescue immediately. So let me just give you the timeline of the POXO time period under the POXO Act. In 24 hours, the FIR, the medical examination, and the reporting to the Child Welfare Commission, that is the shelter home, and the authority which will come to your rescue, that is the juvenile police unit will come. You have to get within 30 days the recording of the statement of the child that you are being harassed by a special court. The trial will be completed in 1 year, and whether the child needs to be taken out to the custody of his parents or the shared household and the place in a shelter home will be decided by the Child Welfare Committee, and the payment of the compensation or any other thing will be decided by the state government. So here, when you talk about going for the medical examination, it has to be accompanied by a person whom the child trusts, whether it is a father or mother. Then if the child is unable to speak in the language, then the interpreter is required. And the Criminal Procedure Code, that is the CRPC, is the main legislation on the procedure of administration of substantive criminal law in India. And the statement of the child has to be recorded. So under section 164 of the code gives the power to the metropolitan magistrate or the judicial magistrate to record the confession and the statements during the course of the investigation under chapter 12 of the law for the time being in force, and any other time afterwards before the commencement of the inquiry or the trial. So to be present in the Child Welfare Committee, so the counselors are also appointed in case of the child abuse to avoid any kind of a mental depression. The identification of the child is kept secret, and because the confidentiality has to be maintained, because the child has a future and the family feels ashamed if the name comes in the public. So name has to be secret in this case. So 6 माह तक का दंड तथा जुर्माना अगर आप किसी बच्चे के साथ यौन उत्पीड़न हो रहा है और उसको आप ना बताएं, आपकी रिपोर्टिंग भी उतनी ही इंपॉर्टेंट है. And to control the crime, need the society participation also. Together we can and we will be able to control the crime. And we have to do and stop the act of sexual harassment. We have to stop it. So this was all from my side. I open the dice for the questions if you have any.
Well, I mean, there were some startling observations that you made, which are well known. One of them is that we tend to depend a lot on law, which works through two mechanisms. One is by generating fear that if I get caught, then what will be the punishment? And the laws keep getting more and more stringent. As you said, POXO is one of the most strict laws in this area that has been formulated. So the fear element has gone up. But following that, there has to be another aspect to it, and that is the threat that the law poses should be executed. There we find that there's a great discrepancy, because as you said that the acquittal rate is 44%, the conviction rate about 15%, that adds to about 70%. I don't know whether the 30% go, But anyway, that apart, the fact is that this is dealing only with those cases which are reported. And as you said, the family itself participates in not reporting the crime because of the social factors, which means that the amount of crime committed is far, far greater than the crime that is reported. And the crime that is punished is only a very small fraction of the crime that is reported. So the reporting itself is a small fraction of what is committed, and the punishment is a tiny fraction of what is reported. Now, which means that the law is basically failing. So instead of going on sort of depending upon a mechanism which does not seem to work, let's at least learn a lesson from it. What is it that will work? And when it comes to that, I think there's a tendency for historical reasons for us to shy away from our own roots and try to copy whatever is happening in the West. The West has become more aware of this type of crimes, so we have become more aware of it. But then what is the West doing? The West is talking a good touch and bad touch, but then under that, when they become really strict, I have read stories in the newspapers of a 5-year-old boy being expelled from school because he kissed a girl in his class. Now, that sort of ridiculous things are also happening. Now, is that what good touch and bad touch is about? Is that what sexual harassment is about? Is that what sexual abuse is about? Why don't we sort of go firstly, to the roots, our own roots, and secondly, bring those roots into education, because that is where the solution lies. I'm not saying that will change things overnight. The laws are necessary as a deterrent, even if they succeed in punishing only a very small fraction of the people who perform the crime. But then, as you said, the focus is on prevention. The crime should not happen. The crime will not happen if the person does not find it tempting. If the potential perpetrator of the crime does not find it tempting at all. He has other sources of happiness to depend upon. He does not treat this as a source of happiness, does not find in it in a pleasure which is worthwhile, because the fact is that everybody knows what is right and wrong. The law is not there to tell him what is right and what is wrong. It's not education in the school about do this, don't do that, this type of touch is good, this type of touch is bad. All that the person knows. What is important is that in spite of knowing why he does it, is because he finds it tempting. He feels that they'll get a certain amount of pleasure which he cannot get from other sources. Now, where we can get that other pleasure, for that the roots are different. On the other hand, if he does such a thing, where does the punishment come from? The punishment comes not from law, as we have seen. The punishment comes from within. The person knows what is wrong. He gets tempted, he still does it. He feels guilty. He should feel uneasy. Now, that is where education lies. Education does not require giving a set of moral rules, do this and don't do that. Sri Aurobindo and the mother's integral system of integral education, in that is one of the core things, that the child should grow up in such a way, without any sermonizing, that the child becomes aware of an inner compass, an inner monitor, which never fails, which is never wrong, which is never absent. And it is that which will tell the child what is right and wrong. And through experiences of a very harmless nature, the child is picking up in early childhood that when I do something right, I get a sense of immense joy, which is uncontaminated by any uneasy feeling. Whereas when I do something wrong, even if I get some cheap thrill, on the whole, I feel guilty. It is contaminated type of a thrill. And then I get recurrent uneasiness. I do not get peace of mind. Now, the person who grows up with that grows up into an adult who knows that when I do something wrong, I will get punishment from within, which I can never escape. That is the only punishment nobody can escape. As you see in the punishment from law, anybody can escape. So that is the limitation of law. So laws are the necessary evil, but laws are not the solution. And the solution is in education, and the solution is not in moral education, give a set of do's and don'ts, good touch, bad touch, and so on. But the solution is waking up that inner judge, that inner monitor within each child. That is what integral education is about. And that is the direction in which we should be going. But somehow, the difference between this aspect of education, which we call psychic education, and what normally passes as moral and value education, is something which is so simple to understand, yet most people neglect it altogether. Even when they go to education, they talk in terms of good touch, bad touch, moral, this is moral, this is immoral, and so on. Now, again, when it comes to good touch and bad touch, if an adult develops sexual feelings against a child, will he start with a bad touch? To start with, he'll start with a good touch. When he gains the confidence from there, he'll go to bad touch, isn't it? So it's not so much the part touched, but the intention behind the touch. And who knows that intention? The person who knows that intention the best is the one who touches, and the next best is the person who is touched.
Yes.
Because without going into which part has been touched, from the vibrations that the person gets, from the way it has been touched, the person knows that this person touch is not the touch of an uncle. This touch has some sinister vibrations around it. That is what is important, not the part touched. That is too simplistic. That is naive. That is not where the uncle will start. If the uncle places his hand even on her shoulder, the girl will feel the way the shoulder has been touched, there's something sinister around it. That is what is important. So these are some of the comments I thought I will make. And of course, within that was only one short question. And that was that if acquittals are around 45%, convictions about 50%, where do the remaining 30% of the reported crimes go?
They are in the process only. They are not solved.
Also, they are pending cases.
Delays, denials, all these things happens. So it is not, being effectively implemented when you talk about the POXO machinery.
So Arunima, you want to say anything? Final comments, and then winding up.
Sure, sir. Thank you so much, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Yeah. Thank you so much, ma'am, for the enlightening session and very important bits of information you shared. I don't think we have any questions now, so we can close today's session with a moment of peaceful silence. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Namita.
Thank you.